So tell us about ESPN, what you're working on now, and what kind of research findings you found recently in terms of your current work in cross-platform.
How much time do we have?
We have
This
a
is
lot of time, a
this
lot
is a
of time.
very probably a lengthy answer because ESPN has been working on cross-platform research for 10 years, over 10 years now, and the part where I've been involved and responsible for it has been the past maybe 4 years, I would say. Um, we were charter subscribers to Nielsen's Convergence Panel. There's a lot of stuff that we got in the door first on, and at this point, we're heavily involved in the SIM projects. I find that I'm on 3 different SIM subcommittees, so it's like a part-time job for me. We were our ESPN XP initiative is we sort of had this umbrella initiative that covers all of these cross-platform projects, and we have completed our first project, which was the World Cup project. We are still working on findings from our football project. It was a much longer project because it lasted for various parts of the football season from September through the BCS week in January. So it was a long project, and a lot of different providers were involved, the same as in World Cup, and we're still looking at some of the data. So, for example, at the time that we're recording this, the ARF is next week, and we're presenting some of the findings from our Arbitron project, which was TV and radio cross-platform at the ARF. But there are many other pieces of it that we're still working on, things that were about advertisers, things that were about promotion, things that were simply about media use. And generally speaking, one of the goals of ESPN XP was to turn cross-platform research from a special project into a standard practice. And I think we've actually, over the past 3 or 4 years, partly from what we've done and partly from what others have done, including, I would say, the CRE and SIM, we might actually be we might be on the threshold of a period when we actually can measure audiences cross-platform. However, one of the things that we have determined is that advertiser research still remains very, very custom. And the reason for that is that each advertiser has a different set of goals for their campaign, a different mix of media in the campaign, different executions within those different media. And so it's very hard to think of a way of doing that in a one-size-fits-all environment. So our Advertiser Insights Research Group has been very, very busy working with advertisers on this. And I would like to say also that we've gotten a great response to this. The advertisers seem very, very interested in the work that we're doing, and really lining up to get on to these projects.
Glenn, can you talk a little bit about the methodology for the football study?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we run into, not just externally but also internally, is that people say, well, can I get the ESPN XP number on this thing? And XP is not a project. It is a collection of projects under the umbrella. So there's a lot of different research providers involved and a lot of different methodologies in the mix. So one of the cornerstones to the whole thing has been our total touch through knowledge networks. So that sort of gives us a look at all the different media. This is through their panel, and it's a yesterday recall, but they have a way of asking yesterday recall that tends to iron out a lot of the issues that you normally have with recall. And that not only provides us with good media usage, but it sort of provides a bridge to the advertising piece, because they're also asking questions about advertising exposure. The Arbitron project that we're presenting is based on their PPM, and it's just a matter of selecting which television and radio exposures that the PPM panelists have been exposed to. So there are well over a dozen vendors and as many different methodologies, and I'd be embarrassed, frankly, to even start talking about the advertising piece, because Barbara Singer on our staff is really the expert on that.
You had mentioned that you're looking towards some standardization of cross-platform metrics, and the advertising component is customized. How are you approaching standardization of metrics for all types of cross-platform?
Well, I don't think that it's as big an issue as sometimes it seems when I'm reading discussions of this subject. I'm not sure what people think a metric is, but if we said, to go back to the three that we proposed, how many, how often, how long, if we say how many, well, we're already measuring how many. It's no big deal. We have reach on TV, and we have uniques in digital media. We have circulation in print. We're already measuring how many people do these behaviors. How often they do it is something else. You have visits on the web, and you have frequency of various types on TV. So again, we call it different things, but we look at how often people engage in the behavior. And the one that we think is most important probably is time. Ironically, time is the one that is probably the easiest to measure because you can stack minutes across different surveys. So if you assume that there's a relatively small amount of overlap in usage, which again is another one of our principles, you can take minutes from TV and you can take minutes from an internet survey, or in our case, we've done it with our server data out of Omniture. And you can say, people are spending this much time with TV and this much time with digital media. And in the case of the World Cup, you can say, well, we got a 17% lift over our in-home TV with the digital piece alone, based on the Omniture data. So that's not really hard to do. What becomes difficult is that you have, in our case, the 5 sets of platforms that we're on, and users of those platforms. You have TV viewers, and you have radio listeners, and people who are using internet and mobile and reading ESPN, the magazine. And then you sort of push these circles to the middle, and how do they overlap? How many people who are watching TV are also using the internet, or also reading print traditionally, and how many people are listening to radio and so forth? And so getting all these 5 pieces to overlap properly is difficult. And that's why we need single source measures. What's really then hard is to take the 5 overlapping pieces, assuming we've got that right, and taking all the different little user segments and then finding out how then they contribute minutes back to the total. So people who are only watching TV are obviously contributing minutes only to TV. But if somebody were watching TV and using the internet and listening to radio, how many minutes are they contributing to TV, to internet, to radio? That really is very, very difficult, but it forms the basis of how we analyze every project. We pretty much set up the same spreadsheet. It's a list of user cells, and then a column for all the times that they're contributing to all the different media that we're analyzing. And just laying it out in that way often provides great insight into what's going on.